Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. I'm really looking forward to having a really in-depth talk today with Scott Silverman. We're going to talk a lot about addiction and people who are struggling with addiction issues, suicide issues. So if there's someone that is watching this that doesn't want to watch it or listen to it, I just wanted to kind of give that start. Scott, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. And I think your topic is so important, of course, always, and relevant so much today with what all of us have been going through with COVID. And I'm going to let you talk about statistics and things of that nature. But I just to share with the Think community, Scott is a CNN hero who knows firsthand the damage that addiction and depression can do. More than 30 years ago, struggling with his own addiction issues, he tried to commit suicide. I'm glad you didn't, but was saved by families and friends. And once sober, he began a lifelong journey to help others get out of their dark chapters. And so kind of take us there for a minute, Scott, because I think a lot of people have been going through dark times this last year. And, what are you saying to them? What do they need to hear?
Well, John, thanks for having me here today. It really is, an honor to be able to sit, with you and your platform and talk about something as fragile as this. And, one of my biggest pushes, and so is the nation's right now, is how do we reduce the stigma? How do we actually encourage people to make a phone call, to reach out, to get online, to do some research? And three of the hardest words in the English language, in my opinion, are I need help.
Yeah.
So, my story is not unusual, but the fact that I talk about it publicly probably is a little more than most. But, the substance use disorders and addiction, mental health issues are critical topics right now in the country, if you think about it. And right now with what's going on with COVID, we're seeing a huge increase in the morbidity rate. Just that word morbidity is kind of one of those words, how do you put your arms around that? But we're seeing overdoses. We're losing young people. We're seeing families disintegrated. And, when somebody self-medicates and, they're screaming for help, but they're not really raising their hand saying, I need help. And the families see it. And the person who suffers from addiction, which is roughly right now, according to the CDC and NIDA, the national organization, and SAMHSA, who studies this, about 15% of the country has an active addiction issue that will erupt over the next 12 months. Well, here's a fascinating factoid, because I know this is a business model that you work on. Those 15% on a daily basis will impact 7 people negatively. So if you do the math, that's 85% of our nation's population that is impacted negatively on a daily basis by somebody who is suffering from the disease of addiction, levels of impairment, untreated trauma, PTSD, mental health issues. And, we're seeing divorce rates increasing. We're seeing, child abuse rates, domestic violence, everything, especially with COVID, because you take somebody who's suffering from this kind of, disorder, and you put them alone, like they say in our program, one of them anyway, my best thinking got me here.
Yeah.
So, what I try to do each day is encourage people to know that there is hope and help. So being able to talk about it on a platform like this, to me, it's the economics of health. We keep people healthy, people get healthy, they live longer, there's a higher level of quality of life. And at the end of the day, we're able to really not only improve how we experience life, but also how we move forward on the path with our families as well. Because we're all struggling societally right now. There's a lot of issues. So that's the negative side, I guess, or the factoid side. The upside is people can get help. People do get better. People do recover. And we shouldn't have to sit in our uncomfortability and not know that there's help out there. So I talk about it whenever I can, and I tell my story, and it usually tips off with, hey, tell us about your attempt at suicide. And that was literally actually 36 years ago now, 1984 in New York. And I was on the ledge of a building. And after a whole week of blackout drinking, I was prepared to I was sitting on the windowsill and I was prepared to just lean back. I had my eyes closed. I was ready to go. I said goodbye to my family and my wife, and I just was done. I didn't know how to explain anymore the kind of behavior that I had been suffering and the foxhole that I dug myself into. And some guy walked, it was his office. He walks in and says, "Hey, Scott, what are you doing? You're going to fall out the window." And I said, "I'm just getting some air." But that was the divine intervention. And then the next few thoughts were, make the call. So I called my wife, flew home that night, was in treatment the next day. And that was on the 13th of November, 1984. So I'm excited to say that I haven't had a need to pick up a drink or self-medicate, but I've got therapeutic support. I've talked to others. I still belong to my own recovery meetings. I practice the principles every day. I do meditation. I try to focus on what's best for me and my primary family, and then shed as much light as I can for others. Well, that's a long answer, I think, to a short question. So let's go to your next question.
Hey, I appreciate it. And just listening to it makes me so emotional to just think about what you must have been going through in that moment. And I have so many questions for you.
And by the way, and putting my family through it too. And it wasn't, by the way, it for people who suffer from this disease, and a lot of people argue, Scott, this really isn't a disease. Okay. If you compare it to diabetes, I'm sorry to go on a little bit, but I want to make sure I get this out there. If you compare it to diabetes, it's not a choice somebody makes. This is not a moral failing. Diabetes, when assessed and treated, you can live a normal life forever. Yeah. The same thing with different forms of addictions and substance use disorders. You can live a normal life. And if you're self-medicating, there's other things going on. So once you remove the anesthesia, that's when the real hard work starts. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Never apologize. Beautifully said. I want to talk about divine intervention for a moment because I want to go back and I have a couple questions about some stuff you've said. But, that person that walked in and said, "Hey, Scott, what are you doing?" Right? What was the shift in consciousness you had in that milliseconds, right? The energy of what he said, the consciousness in which he said it, was the exact frequency that you needed to hear in that moment.
It's an interesting question. And I just shared this on a podcast last Friday, and I was depressed for 2 days after that, kind of flashing back on what that time was like. I mean, I flew to New York on a 7 a.m. flight. I was drunk before I was even on the stairway to get on the plane and was nearly arrested. I was escorted off the plane by New York's finest because there had been an episode of inappropriateness on the plane and they were going to arrest me. So that was the start of my week of hell, if you will. And I think the first thing that came to my mind, to be totally honest, is as a kid, I think a lot of us, hey, I'm just going to kill myself. I hear it a lot from families today when they say that their son or daughter is threatening that. And, I said, we need to move quickly, and as a crisis coach, you can't schedule a crisis. You have to work with it quickly. And the thing that came to my head first was a statement my mom had made when I wrote a note once about running away and wanting to kill myself. We sat down and she talked to me and she said, being a Jewish mom, giving me as much guilt as she could, she said, suicide is selfish. So that was the first thing that went through my head. And the second flash was how inappropriate of me to leave my wife. We've just been married 2 years. She'd just been through the last 2 years of hell with me. We'd known each other a long time, but how selfish of me to do that. So that was the trigger. And then when I stepped inside and sat down and had a significant cry and realized I can't ask for help. I've been offered it, but I've refused it because I didn't really think I had a problem. And I think that's a common thing with people. It's like, it's like the parent who says, my kid would never do that. Well, wait, your kid's on the other line. Guess what? Probation's talking to me. They're handcuffed. They're on a gurney. They're ER. What?
Yeah.
So that was it. It was my mom's statement and disappointing, I guess, my wife. And then realizing that, I'm one of God's children. It wasn't my fault, but I thought it was.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to rewind for a minute, and I want to talk about, asking for help, because I find that in business, right? A lot of people just don't ask for help. It's such a vulnerable state, to be in, asking for help. And, thank God for Brene Brown and the hundreds of millions of downloads. Her TED Talks and her amazing books talk about that vulnerability is an amazing thing. And so, you said the words, I need help. But I don't know. People do have a problem asking for help, whether it's in business, whether it's in what you're talking about. And so what is your advice, having walked through your journey, the formula of courage to ask for help?
Well, I'm not even sure it's courage at first. Sometimes it's desperation. But my attitude is it doesn't matter what the tipping point is. Whatever you can muster as a way to, and a lot of it, I talk about it in my first book, is how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Uh-huh.
And when my attitude is, if everything's working the way you need it and want it to be, don't worry about it. But if you're stumbling here, or you're falling short of your goals, or you're just missing the mark, or you're not winning the lottery, or, there's something going on in your own personal life, or, like me this year, I'm a pretty, I think, structured, disciplined guy. Well, I'm wearing elastic waist pants because I've been home this year and my ability to manage my weight has not been successful. But when I bring it up, it's probably one of the most unique environments that people have been in. And, everybody says, me too. And, you get people to stand up on Zoom and go, oh my God, you're right. You have put on a few pounds. So my point is, if you don't know how to ask for help, ask for help. Meaning it's not like you have to go out and buy a new car. You can lease a little bit of advice from somebody and see if it triggers something that makes sense. Because you can always go the other way and you can always give it back and you can always ignore it. But why not seek it out and do it with someone you really trust first? And or maybe a complete stranger that you've heard about that you might, people call me all the time I've never met. And when I talk about, wanting to help others, when I get these calls like, hey, I saw you on Channel 2 in Detroit. How can I help? Oh, I need some money. I said, well, don't we all? I said, get $1 from a friend and play the lottery. But, when there's someone's really serious and says, and I can talk to anybody anywhere in the country. And if you don't mind, I'm going to give my number out right now in the middle of this. It's 619-993-2738. 619.
Hold on 1 second.
2738.
248.
619.
Okay.
993-2738. 619-993-2738. And I dare people to call me and text me. And I don't care where you are in the world. We can talk Zoom, Skype, social media. Because here's the thing. As a family navigator, what I love the most, and by the way, anybody who's listening to this, John, and I don't know how big your audience is, but I don't care. I love drinking from a fire hose. For the rest of the month of March, okay, if you call me or contact me, I'm happy to give you 10 minutes free. And I've got to be honest, free is my second favorite F word. But I'm happy to do that because you know what? If it motivates you, stimulates you, irritates you, but it just gets you into action. Because sometimes just making a phone call, and there are crisis hotlines all over this country right now, and they've really been ramped up because of the COVID virus. And I think we have a administration right now that's really working on trying to find ways to help people at multiple levels. But you know what? I don't rely on the government for anything. And I run a treatment center. I work with private insurance. But my biggest issue right now is working with families that, have to make a tough decision. And when I hear kids say, I don't want to go to treatment because there's COVID there. And the parent gets on the phone and says, wait a minute, you've been shooting heroin for 2 weeks in our home and you're saying you're worried about COVID? So
let's talk about, and I think there's a glitch. And I think as people like you, Scott, are talking about what's going on, it helps so many people, I think, ramp up their courage. When they see somebody who in 1984 is sharing their story from 1984, as you did earlier, and now we're sitting here 2021 and you've been living this journey and helping so many people. It really, I think, helps rise people up to ask them for help. I want to ask you before I want to talk to you about your book in a minute, your books. in your new book and your past book. But what are the signs that people should be looking for from their children, from friends who are in trouble but not asking for help?
Yeah. Great question, and a commonly asked one. And it's interesting, how parents really, no one's trained for this. This kind of thing is just, unless you're trained for it, it's very unusual. So you look for behavioral changes. You look for weight gain, weight loss. You look for, sleep pattern changes. You look for attitudinal behavioral changes that happen. You say, hi, how are you? Leave me alone. I'm just going to my room. So whatever it is that seems a little bit different. And what I've learned over the years in my own experience working with families is, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. When you ask a question, try not to follow up with the labeling and the things you've seen and what you want to try to do to fix something. Just listen. And if the child gets upset or your significant doesn't want, just say, tell me more. The better you can listen, the more information you're going to get, especially when someone's in pain. But the problem is with families, because they're close, that shame is so prevalent, and no one wants to tell their mom, hey, I'm smoking marijuana and I'm doing some Xanax and I tried some cocaine and I love it. No one's going to say that out loud. Please don't expect that. But so it's really behavioral change, shifts in attitude, friends that they're seeing, and things that are happening. Oh, of course, the common things are, valuables missing from the home is a big one. And of course, if they're back in school, and this has been a big issue this last year, kids aren't in school. And that's that is one of the tipping points where teachers are able to see the behavior, or they can watch it and then, intervene somewhat. So we've lost that whole arena. It's coming back again. But so this last year has been tough on families.
Yeah. It's I appreciate all of the insight that you are sharing. Talk to the Think community a little bit about being a CNN hero. You've been recognized as one of 800 individuals globally since the inception of CNN Heroes in 2007. And just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, that was a great experience. Scary, and I was, what it is, somebody sends a letter in, and it's interesting. A few people, when they started asking for it became a big promotional piece. I had a few people send letters in on my behalf, and actually a buddy of mine at my recovery meeting sent something in, and his letter was picked up, and they reached out to me, and you have to sign all these different waivers. And during that pool, when I did it in 2008, it was the second year. And there were 7,300 people in that pool. And then they skew it down to 100. And not everyone knows this. And I think it's just kind of a cool story personally. And then of the 100, you have to sign everything off and all these waivers and all this stuff. And, open up to them making site visits and doing background checks and so on and so forth. And then they pick 3 of the 100. That's the way they were doing it back then. And I remember getting, I put their number in my phone, so excited, and the phone rings, and I'm waiting for this great news. And they're saying, Scott, look, we're really, really sorry. You have a great story, but unfortunately we only can pick 3 of the 100. But feel free to resubmit again. I was so upset. And, anyway, 3 days later, I get a phone call again, and they go, look, we've changed our minds. You're one of the top 3. So I laughingly said, so did somebody not pass the background check? And they go, well, legally we can't respond to that question. So I was chosen, and it was just so exciting. And I got an opportunity. They came out, they filmed for a couple of days. They met my family, they met the staff, they met our clients, the graduates of the work I'd done at an organization I founded back in 93 called Second Chance, working with inmates coming out of jail and prison, men and women, helping them with housing, jobs, and getting them access to treatment. So that was a really, really cool experience. And I remember we had almost 5,000 queries. This is back in 2008. And what was fascinating, the night that I was announced was the night that Larry King was introducing Barack Obama running for presidency. So it was a hugely watched show. Yeah. And so it was really tremendous to build awareness. And I got calls from all over the country, mostly moms who had their children in prison and wanted some help with it. So, it's a cool club to be part of, if you could call it that.
You're doing beautiful work. I'm a big believer that many of us who are in alignment and are teaching our own pain. right? So we can, it's, and that isn't always easy, but you're doing beautiful things to help people and give people a voice to ask for help and get help. So I can't thank you enough. Let's talk a little bit about your books. You have, a book that's coming out in winter of 2021 called The Opioid Epidemic. And then your past book, Tell Me No, I Dare You. Give us kind of a 30-second review on what the reader will get from reading either of the books.
Well, let me talk about the most current one, the opioid epidemic, obviously pretty topical. I've been working on that for about 2.5 years. And in that book will be stories from different families. We've got a local district attorney who's quoted in the book. And what I really tried to do is carve out a path for individuals. And I had some great support helping write it from someone who's much smarter than I am. And I dictated all of it. It's my voice. But the idea is simply to let people know there is hope and help. You pick up the book, and what happens is you're going to find something in there that's going to help you set your GPS and go to the next steps. So it's not a matter of, it's not just statistics. It's about families who have done things and families who have actually lost loved ones, and they've shared that experience, strength, and hope as well. And the first book, Tell Me No, I Dare You, was all about getting from no to yes. And it's fascinating when I did that book, I studied probably about 300 people and found out that 7 out of 10 people, when they're told no, stop. They just disengage, put it in park, and walk out of the car, which is amazing to me. So the idea of that book is how to get to yes. And it's my journey, and also a lot of the clients that I served as well. So, and both of those can be gotten on my website, yourcrisiscoach.com. Order it that way. And the new book will be on Amazon and probably within 60 days. All goes well. Yeah.
And let's talk about, before we move into a quick speed round, what your crisis coach is, right? Like who are your ideal clients? Are they the parents? Are they the people going through something? Are they who are your client? Who's your ideal client? And tell us a little bit about yourcrisiscoach.com.
Okay. Well, basically, I work with anybody. I mean, I work with EAPs, I work with HRs, I work with leaders of corporations. I talk to individuals. I just met with a family the other day, and their 18-year-old, has got some issues going on. So he and I spoke, and I brought mom in on the Zoom call and said, "Look, we figured it out." She said, "You did?" I said, "Yeah, we're going to need to work on this a little bit, and I'm going to work with him separately, and I'd like to work with you and your husband and his sister." So what I try to do is work with the whole family. I'm not a clinician. Most of my experience is experiential and anecdotal, but I've done a lot of work with thousands and thousands of families. So what I try to do is bring that experience, strength, and hope to the table and help them navigate next steps. And that's really what the crisis coaching piece is about. I work with behavioral health issues, people that are depressed, people who suffer, work with first responders. So there's really no limit to who I can help. But what I do is I help them get to the next level of support and the highest level of care. That's my passion. So if somebody says, "Look, I can't sleep," or I'm not sleeping, or I can't get along with my significant other, or my neighbor's irritating me, we talk about it. Then I ask some key questions and then move them quickly. I'm not like I don't mean to pound them, chiropractor, meaning I don't want to see clients every week for the rest of their life. I want to give them the tools and let them make their own path. That way they're accountable and they've got skin in the game, and they'll do something about it if they really want to.
Yeah. I love what you're talking about. I can't thank you enough for taking time to just share your vulnerable story and the joy of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis to help other people. Quick speed round. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. The best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Love yourself.
It's good.
As best you can.
Finish this sentence. The first step to asking for help is?
Asking for help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead and complicate it, but that's the easy answer.
Finish this sentence. The best way to practice asking for help is?
Know there is a solution.
Yeah. Yeah. The number one place that somebody should call if they are struggling, you've offered your number, 619-993-2738. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 800-273-8255. But when people are in that situation and you've been there, who's the first person? Who should they reach out to?
Simple answer. Go online and Google and put in your statement. I am depressed. I don't feel good. I can't sleep. Watch what pops up. We have the internet today. There's so much information out there. 800 numbers, all done anonymously. Just reach out. And if you're not sure which way to go, that's what a family navigator is. I mean, if your faith-based leader, I know it's a little longer answer, your primary doctor, someone you love and trust, someone you trust and love, whichever way you look at it. But just don't do it alone, because that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Don't do it alone. If you have no choice, go Google it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love everything that you're talking about. I just want to kind of share a couple things as I recap what you're talking about today. The power of asking for help, the power of paying attention to universal intervention, the power of hope, reaching out and having coaches and mentors that can provide you tools that make things, that next step easier in life. And the overall theme of what you're talking about, which is don't do it alone. Find someone, have someone that you can talk to, call anonymously or whatever. You've been so generous with offering your phone number. I'm going to give it again, 619-993-2738. Scott Silverman, yourcrisiscoach.com. 800 National Prevention Lifeline, Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 800-273-8255. Thank you for your beautiful work that you're doing, Scott, in the world. I really appreciate it. It's helping so many people, and it must feel really good to know that you're helping people that maybe you don't even ever connect with personally, but through your website, through your work, through you putting yourself out there, it is helping so many people. So with that being said, I'll let you close with any final thoughts.
Well, John, thank you so much for the opportunity. And it's really true, because what I've learned is when you help somebody, they'll help somebody. It becomes organic and it really grows. What is that? One person helps one person.
Yeah.
We can create systemic change that way.
Yeah.
So again, 619-993-2738. And I'm in the business, if you will, of helping save lives. And I'm in this funeral avoidance campaign for 2021. So if there's anything that I can do to encourage you to do anything that you can do, even the smallest thing, taking the baby steps, do something. Don't just sit there. Do something. Get into action. Because guess what? That will create an opportunity for change.
I love it. Thank you, Scott. Stay on the line for just a minute. But Think Community, thanks so much. If Scott can help you, please reach out. Scott, thank you so much.
Thank you, John.